From the Disney Pixar Storybook Collection, this is Cars Race Day. Vroom, vroom. 3 cars zoomed around the track at the Los Angeles International Speedway. They had just started the year's biggest race, the tiebreaker for the Piston Cup Championship. The race cars were in a dead heat. There was the King, a racing legend who was looking for one more win before retirement. Chick Hicks, a tough racer who had spent his career chasing the King's tailpipe. And Lightning McQueen, the rookie sensation who had taken the racing world by storm. Just a week ago, all 3 race cars had tied for first place at the Dinoco 400, a racing first. Today's tiebreaker would determine the winner once and for all. A lot had happened to McQueen since the Dinoco 400. In fact, he really wasn't the same race car he once had been. On the way to California, he'd had a road mishap and had ended up in Radiator Springs, a remote, sleepy town. All the cars he'd met there had changed him a lot. At first, McQueen hated being stuck in the tiny town. He'd been separated from his driver, Mac, and barreled into Radiator Springs in a panic. He'd sped out of control and crashed into everything, ruining the main road. The town had sentenced McQueen to fix the pavement before he could leave. McQueen wanted to go to his race, but the longer he stayed in Radiator Springs, the more he got to know the cars who lived there. And a funny thing happened. He began to like the little town. A rusty tow truck named Mater became his best friend. He'd taught McQueen to drive backwards and to tip tractors. Sally was a blue sports car who taught him that the journey itself was sometimes more important than how quickly you got there. The race car had even got new tires from Luigi and a sleek paint job from Ramon, 2 other cars from town. When the press had found McQueen, he'd been hustling into a trailer to go to the big race. He hadn't really known how to say goodbye to his new friends. Now the cars were 50 laps into the race. The King had a short lead with Chick Hicks and McQueen close behind. McQueen tried to pass Chick, but Chick squeezed him out. McQueen tried to focus on the race, but his mind drifted off. He was thinking about the wonderful drive he'd had with Sally back in Radiator Springs. As the rookie snapped out of his daydream, he realized he was heading into the wall. He gasped and braked hard, which made him spin into the infield. McQueen just sat there, stunned, unable to move. The other 2 racers were already far ahead of him. The rookie wondered if he should even keep going. The race just didn't seem as important to him anymore. Just then, his radio crackled. "I didn't come here to see you quit," a familiar voice said. It was Doc. McQueen looked over to his pit and saw Doc, along with a bunch of his friends from Radiator Springs. Sarge, Fillmore, Flo, Ramon, Sheriff Guido, and Luigi. He rolled into pit row. "Guys," McQueen called as he entered his pit. "You're here!" The race car was so excited he could hardly contain himself. "It was Doc's idea," said Ramon. McQueen looked up at the crew chief platform. The Radiator Springs town judge and doctor, Doc Hudson, was there, wearing his fabulous Hudson Hornet logo, just like in his glory days. After winning 3 Piston Cups, Doc had become a wreck. By the time he'd been fixed up, no one cared about him anymore. He vowed never to return to the racing circuit. At first, he hadn't taken very kindly to McQueen, but the rookie's time in Radiator Springs had taught Doc a few things too. And now here he was, supporting McQueen. "I knew you needed a crew chief," Doc said to McQueen, "but I didn't know it was this bad." "Doc, look at you," exclaimed McQueen. "I thought you said you'd never come back." "I really didn't have a choice," replied Doc. "Mater didn't get to say goodbye." McQueen looked over at the rusty old tow truck, who grinned at him. The race car was glad to see his friend. "All right," said Doc, getting McQueen's attention back. "If you can drive as good as you can fix a road, then you can win this race with your eyes shut. Now, get back out there." McQueen revved his engine and sped onto the track. There was no way he was going to lose this race now. "We are back in business," Doc hooted over the radio. McQueen was a lap behind. He drove hard and began making up ground quickly. With only 60 laps to go, McQueen caught up to the leaders. Chick saw that the rookie was trying to pass him. As McQueen tried to make a move, Chick slammed into him. The crash sent McQueen into a 180-degree spin. But he kept on going and passed Chick while driving backwards. The crowd loved it. "I taught him that," Mater said proudly. McQueen gave Chick a quick smile and spun back around. 50 laps later, it was a dead heat. Chick pushed hard and tried to overtake McQueen. Now, neck and neck, they bumped into each other. Suddenly, McQueen's tires went flat. Rubber and debris littered the raceway. McQueen headed for the pit. He had to get back on the track before the pace car let King and Chick go, or he'd be behind a lap. Guido changed the tires quickly, and McQueen pulled out just ahead of the pace car. He still had some ground to make up. A few laps later, McQueen had caught up. Then the white flag dropped. This was it, the final lap. McQueen approached Chick and the King, ready to make his move. McQueen went high around a turn. Chick tried to smash him against the wall. McQueen was sent spinning into the infield, but using a trick he'd learned from Doc, turn right to go left, he recovered and took the lead, even passing the King. He was about to become the Piston Cup champion. But Chick wasn't about to come in third. He rammed against the King. The racing veteran crashed into the wall and spun into the infield. The crowd gasped. McQueen looked at the giant TV screen and saw what had happened to the King. He couldn't believe it. It reminded him of Doc's crash. The rookie screeched to a stop just before crossing the finish line. He couldn't win, not like this. It just wasn't right. Chick zoomed past him to win the race, but McQueen didn't care. He turned around and drove over to the King. The guy was a legend, and McQueen didn't want to see him end his career like this. "What are you doing, kid?" the King asked. "I think the King should finish his last race," McQueen answered. He drove behind the battered race car and began pushing him forwards. Everyone watched as the rookie edged the King over the finish line. The crowd went wild. Chick celebrated his victory, but the crowd booed him off the stage. No one cared that he had won the race because McQueen had won their hearts. Meanwhile, McQueen pushed the king over to his crew. Then the rookie headed over to his own tent, where his friends were all waiting to congratulate him. Even Tex, Dinoco's owner and the biggest sponsor of the Piston Cup, wanted to talk to him. "Hey, Lightning," Tex said to him, "how would you like to be the new face of Dinoco?" "But I didn't win," McQueen replied. "There's a whole lot more to racing than just winning," said Tex. McQueen was flattered, but as he looked back at his tent, he decided to stick with Rust-eze, the small company that had sponsored him all along. But he did ask Tex for a favor. "Woo-hoo-hoo!" Mater cried. "Look at me, I'm flying!" It was 2 days after the race, and the tow truck was soaring over Radiator Springs in the Dinoco helicopter. The race car had once promised his best friend a helicopter ride, and he kept his promise. Just then, McQueen drove up to his friend Sally. "Just passing through?" she asked. "You haven't heard?" he answered. "Yeah, there's a rumor floating around that some hotshot Piston Cup race car is setting up his big racing headquarters here." She smiled, and they sped away together. McQueen had found a home. He was finally happy, even though he hadn't won the big race.